Toshiba, I'm sorry, Council Vice President, are you going to do a greeting or would you prefer I do it?
Doesn't matter. Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Town Council. Margot, at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, please.
Thank you. I, Margot G.K., the Town Clerk of the Town of Morristown, by state it is 7:32 p.m. on Tuesday, July 26, 2021, and that this special meeting is being held remotely via webinar. Both adequate and electronic notice of this meeting were provided according to law by written notice to the Morristown Daily Record, the official newspaper of the Town of Morristown, and to the New York Star Ledger, both more than 48 hours ago. It was also posted in Town Hall and on the town website and filed with the Office of the Town Clerk of the Town of Morristown. I do further state that I shall enter into the minutes of this special meeting a statement that such notice was furnished as particularly described by me in this public announcement. I'll take a roll call. Councilwoman Cotton.
Present.
Councilman Elms, have you joined us? Okay. Councilwoman Foster.
Here.
Councilman Iannacone.
Here.
Councilman Mayer.
Here.
Councilman Silva.
Present.
And Council President Armington.
Here, I think.
Council Vice President Foster will be chairing the meeting this evening. Council Vice President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence, please. Followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to
the flag
of the United States,
of
the United States of America,
and to the republic
for
which it stands,
one
nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, please be aware that public comment during the public hearing portion of this meeting will be moderated through the Zoom app. At the appropriate time, members of the public wishing to speak should indicate so by raising his or her hand in the app. You will find the raise your hand icon at the bottom left side of your screen. You may also raise your hand by pressing *9 on your telephone. When it is your turn, the moderator will send a signal through the app and ask that you unmute yourself so that you may be heard. To unmute yourself on the phone, please press *6. Before we go to the consent agenda, Council Vice President Foster and council members, on the agenda this evening, after agenda item G, council response to public hearing comments, we will be adding 2 additional items. First, the report of mayor and town officials, followed by other presentations and reports. Those were inadvertently left off of tonight's agenda, so we are adding them now. On the consent agenda, we have 11 items. Are there any items that member of council would like to pull for separate consideration?
I will abstain on item number 1 since I was absent on May 25.
Okay. All right, so for consent agenda item number 1, may I have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion to adopt. I'll second it.
Okay. Councilwoman Cotton.
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone.
Yes.
Councilwoman Mayer.
Yes.
Councilman Silva.
Abstain.
Of course, Council President Armington. And Council Vice President Foster.
Yes.
Motion carried. On agenda items number 2 through 11, may I have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second it.
Okay, Councilwoman Cotton.
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone.
Yes.
Councilman Mayer.
Yes.
Councilman Silva.
Yes.
Council President Armington.
Yes.
Council Vice President Foster.
Yes.
Motion carries. At this time, I'll open the floor for a public hearing on any matter. Again, please raise your hand in the Zoom app to indicate that you speak. If you've joined the meeting via telephone, press *9. Kindly state your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Be advised that any derogatory comments targeting members of council and/or administration may be ruled out of order. Please be advised that comments received via email will be read at the conclusion of the public hearing.
Council President, the first public speaker is Marie Rosen. If you would please unmute yourself and state your name and address to the record.
My name is Marie Roseanne, and I'm at 40 West Park Place in Morristown. And I would like to say thank you to the developers of the property at Morris Avenue in Ridgedale for listening to the concerns of their neighbors and now present a very attractive work-live building. Certainly, this is a project for which the developers can be very proud. I do have a concern regarding the pilot possible grant. Morristown has by far the highest property taxes in Morris County. So the question is, will granting of Hanson Properties, the requested pilot, shift the property tax burden to the taxpayers of Morristown? So the small businesses, the residents, and indirectly to the renters. Should we be voluntarily giving away taxpayers' money? Should we be essentially subsidizing Hanson's return on their investment? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roseanne. The next public speaker is Richard Mazelewski. Mr. Mazelewski, if you would please unmute yourself and state your name and address to the record.
Yes, my name is Richard Mazelewski. I live at 14 Hill Street, Morristown. I just like to mention that I'm happy that these Zoom meetings occur. It does give us an opportunity to be at home, and if we can't make it in or weather is not permitting, it's a chance. So in parallel, maybe with meetings in in-person meetings, that might work out great. Anyway, I'd like to speak on the pilot program. Unfortunately, a pilot program such as this reminds me of a timeshare sales presentation I was bribed to attend. Made to look like a dream come true, participants were asked to pay thousands of dollars for the right to save money and attend luxurious vacation locations throughout the world. Well, it doesn't work that way. Many people realize promises made never materialized. The details of added expenses were overlooked, and financial responsibilities proved to be overwhelming. Many wanted out, but it was too late. After signing a lifelong contract, they didn't fully understand. The point here is that smoke and mirrors may not allow you to see the devil in the details. Pilot programs were started as a means to promote development, removing blight. In general, pilots are generous to developers and in reality, may be financially unfair to municipalities, especially over the long run. I see many pitfalls. First, even though this project will have school-aged children, it's my understanding anyway, in the apartments, and add to the county tax burden, it proposes to be exempt from paying all school taxes. The effects on county taxes will be significant over time and will only mean the burden will be placed on you and me as taxpayers in absorbing the difference. Next, I don't understand how an afterthought by the town or the developer for financial concessions should be considered after approval had been made and development has begun. The concept of pilots is to bring parties to consider redevelopment, not reward them for continuing a project in progress. I do know that this pilot concept will be taken over by other developers in the future, regardless of how vibrant our real estate and housing market has become. Finally, the town prepared for the fiduciary responsibility of preparing and executing an agreement to the extent that it includes all potential negative impacts to payments in lieu of taxes? Is the agreement based on cost of the project or annual rent? How are these figures derived? For example, can parking be charged without being considered rent? Are extra charges and surcharges considered rent? And once again, the devil is in the details. And I'll leave you with that thought. Are you sure the details of this agreement has been thought out? And are you convinced this financial agreement benefits the town and county? Is it truly a way to magically bring added income to our town through the smoke and mirrors? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Modzelewski. Council President, I don't see any other hands raised for public comment.
Sorry. Bill Burns tried to raise his hand, but in absence, he's sitting with me, so he's going to provide his comments through my screen, if that's all right.
Mr. Burns, will you state your name and address to the record, please?
My name is Bill Byrne, and I live in Morristown. My address is 100 Franklin Street, Morristown. And I'm here tonight to represent the ARC Morris on housing for people with special needs. And I just want to say that I support the apartments for people with special needs because it's vitally important, you know. And the reason why it's vitally important is because the ARC Morris, who I've been a member of a long time, I am representing the ARC Morris, and they also are working on, you know, like the people that are on the waiting list for special needs. And just want to say I support the apartments for people with special needs because it is vitally important. And it's a win-win situation because what happens, they become productive citizens in Morristown. And isn't that what it's all about? Is that Morristown supports everyone, whether they have special needs or not. And I just feel it's vitally important. And plus, we've been council people and Arlington, and I forget the one from council from the Ward 1 is that this is a long time in coming, and I would really feel very honored if everybody would get on the bandwagon and support these apartments for people with special needs, so we can get a lot of these people off the waiting list, and so that they can be good, productive citizens in the community and share a part in going to stores and stuff and being independent as possible as they can, because that's what it's all supposed to be about here. That we welcome everyone, if that's the case. And we should, this is the reason why that I feel that we should build these apartments for people with special needs. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Council President, there are no other public comments. Hands raised for public comment.
I do have one public comment that was received via email from Carolyn Kleinman of 12 Crestwood Road. She writes, to all town council members, in reference to new building projects that are requesting pilot exemptions, please do not allow this. Educating our children is one of the most important commodity responsibilities. Bargaining with out-of-town developers to take away school funds so that the town looks good, or so you can brag about how you kept taxes down. This is unacceptable and very short-sighted, not to mention the behind-the-scenes deal-making before the planning zoning boards have approved it. It is not trustworthy government. I expect more from my elected officials.
Thank you. There are no other public comments.
Okay, so at this time, we will close the public hearing and move into council responses to public hearing comments.
I'd like to address some of the comments on the Morristown pilot, Morris pilot project. I think to the one commenter's point, the devil is in the details, and that is the biggest challenge for the council and the administration to express the details without violating the confidentiality of the financial agreement and the financial documents. And I'm going to essentially explain a little bit of that. The way the financial feasibility is assessed is essentially to evaluate the construction costs relative to the maximum rents that can be obtained, and that provides the rate of return on investment. In this case, without a pilot, the rate of return on investment is 6%, and the cost, as I understand it, to borrow money is roughly 3%. So the rate of return is 3%, which is not viable. So the question comes down to, do you believe that that is not viable and the project cannot be built without more professionals, council members, said that that is not viable. 10 to 12% is viable. The state has said that anything less than 10% is not viable. So the question, is it worth the risk to allow the project to not get built? And in this case, we have a vacant lot. It's been vacant since 2016. Prior to it was a rental spot, totally underutilized for being so close to the train station. And so is it worth it to have a vacant lot at this site? The question also to be asked is, can a project be built on this property without a tax pilot? And the answer is, of course it can. But will it have the quality that the town has asked for? Will it have all the benefits that the town receives as a result of being part of this public-private partnership? And the answer to that is no. So that is the trade-off in these public partnerships. 10 years, that pilots are not needed. In this case, the developer's application with the review of our professionals shows that it is not. So that's the risk. That's all I have.
Just a matter of order. On the Zoom this evening, I see that we have Russell Bradshaw, who's counsel for the applicant, our financial consultant, Robert Powell, and also our development counsel, John Iglesino, and our town planner, Phil Abramson. I think a lot of the questions that Roseanne, Rich, and Carol raised are going to be kind of addressed in their presentations. You will find, as Stefan was saying, there's a lot of detail and a lot of review by everybody on this council and by administration and by the professionals. So what I'd like to do, Jillian, or Vice Chairperson, is wait and have this discussion during the deliberation on the resolution itself? Or because I think, were we planning any kind of presentation or questions?
Yes, Councilman, we have a presentation planned with all of the professionals that are on this call that'll take place after the
Perfect.
conclusion of this section. So
I think what the proper order might be is let's let them do their presentation. Council and the public will have an opportunity, I believe, to ask questions, and we can basically give you our deliberations on the matter before we do the vote.
I'm in agreement with that.
okay.
All right, so moving on to, you said there were no more members of the public, correct?
Correct. Public comment has been closed.
Okay.
And unless, Mayor Doherty, if you have another report, then I'll start the presentation.
No, I'm good.
Okay. So we have a multi-part presentation tonight, and with the intent of sharing information for the public, both about pilots in general, as well as the financial agreement and the pilots being considered tonight by the council members. We are going to start with Russell Bershad, who is a pilot expert and counsel. David Minchella will introduce him. He will be providing a brief overview of pilots and how pilots are directly related to the school funding, which I know is a question that has been raised by members of the public. After that, it will be followed by a brief overview of the project by our planner, Phil Abramson, who will then turn it over to Bob Powell, who is our financial advisor, who will describe the specifics of the financial agreement that's before you, and then close out with any questions that you may have. And John Inglesino can address any questions related to the financial agreement that council members may have. So with that, I will turn over to David Minchella to introduce Russell Bershad.
Thank you, Jillian. And if I could just reiterate that Mr. Bershad is not here on behalf of any applicant. He was asked by the administration to be here to specifically address the general process for pilot agreements under the New Jersey Local Redevelopment Law. I'm pleased that he's with us tonight. I'd like to provide a little background on Mr. Bershad. Mr. Bershad is an attorney with the Gibbons Law Firm, where he is the senior director of the Gibbons Real Property Group. He also leads the transactional real estate practice. Mr. Bershad is one of 14 Band 1 real estate attorneys in New Jersey, recognized by the Chambers USA Guide to America's Leading Law Firms. He is listed in NJ Biz Mag. He was listed in NJ Biz Magazine's 2016 Power 75 real estate list of leading individuals in real estate in New Jersey. In addition, Mr. Bershad was named by the New Jersey Super Lawyers as the Real Estate Lawyer of the Year of the Newark region for 2017, and has been included in the list of New Jersey super lawyers in real estate for over a dozen years. He's also been listed in Best Lawyers for many years as one of the select group of New Jersey lawyers elected for membership in the American College of Real Estate Lawyers. And I'm very pleased that Mr. Bershad could be with us tonight. He is going to speak briefly, and he will also be able to take any questions that the council might have. Thank you, Mr. Bershad. Thank you for being here.
Thanks very much for that introduction. Happy to be here. Yes, I have no interest in this application. I haven't read the application. I know virtually nothing about the application. We don't represent the developer. We don't represent the municipality. What I can tell you is I've practiced as a commercial real estate attorney for over 40 years. And the current law, the long-term tax exemption law, was adopted about 29 years ago. I've been working on pilot agreements since then. They're an active, important part of our practice. For anyone who represents developers, pilots are an important part of the practice. So it's a pilot agreement. The word pilot doesn't really appear in the statute. It's a financial agreement providing for payment in lieu of taxes and it exempts the improvements, doesn't exempt the land. So the developer will continue to pay land taxes, and land tax will be divided in conventionally the way any other taxes are divided. So there's a municipal portion, there's a school board portion, there's a county portion, and any other agencies that share in taxes share in the land taxes. It's the improvements that are exempted, and on the improvements, the developer pays a statutory amount, which is negotiated between the town and the developer. there's a minimum amount that's set by statute, and then the parties can negotiate up from the minimum. The payment that is remitted to the municipality, the pilot, is divided between the township and the county as follows. The township receives 95% of the payment, the county receives 5% of the payment. So it's generally speaking, pilots, as a general statement, are probably, you're paying less than you would pay if you were conventionally taxed. But a second and important factor for the developer is that the developer knows what it will be paying over the course of the pilot, which can be, under a conventional pilot, up to 30 years from CO. On some projects can go longer than that, phased projects, but we'll say up to 30 years. Because the statutory, the formula is set forth in the financial agreement, the developer knows what it's going to be paying, and that's an important factor for the developer. A municipality receiving 95% of a pilot payment may well receive more money from that than a municipality which receives, say, 35% of conventional taxes taxed at a higher rate. If you just do the math, it's quite possible the township yields more money with a pilot, even though the pilot may result in a lower tax payment by the developer. The statute's an incentive for development. That's critical. You can't start construction of a project until the pilot is in place, the pilot agreement is in place. Because if you did, you wouldn't be incentivized to develop the project by virtue of having received the tax exemption. The developer can't be anybody. It has to be a special form of entity called an urban renewal entity. And an urban renewal entity is an entity that is a limited dividend or nonprofit entity. And it's important to note to some of the comments about windfalls for developers, et cetera, that if a developer's profits are limited, and if a developer's profits exceed the limitation that's set forth in the statute, those are called excess net profits, and the excess net profits get remitted to the municipality as additional pilot payment. So what you really have here is projects that are either going to get built with a pilot or will not get built. It's false to presume that, why don't we just tax the project conventionally? And the answer is, as stated by the councilman before, is that the project won't move forward. So you'd have a choice of incentivizing a project and having the project built and enjoying the benefits of the project, and taking a non-productive or fallow piece of property and converting it to something productive, or not having the project built. So yes, the school doesn't receive, it receives the land tax portion. It won't receive the pilot with regard to the improvements, but it won't receive that payment if the project doesn't get built. There won't be a tax if the project doesn't get built. There will be no revenue. And that's what the pilots have done for many areas, in many areas of the state, have been able to be developed because of pilots. It's probably fair to say that Jersey City along the waterfront could not be developed if it were not for pilots. And there's many other areas throughout the state where projects simply could not proceed if it were not for pilots. They are one of a few incentives that a municipality controls, financial incentives. There are state incentives, of course, but they're one of the few that the municipality controls, and they lead to projects being built at the end of the day.
Bruce, can you talk a little bit more about the school budget and how that is or is not impacted by the pilot agreement?
Well, every municipality has to adopt and have approved a budget. Taxes have to be raised to pay to cover the budget. Whether or not a project has a pilot, you still have to have the appropriate amount of taxes to pay the school budget. So if you build a project and it has a pilot, you still have to, the same properties that supported the school budget, without excluding this project, which has a pilot, are going to support the school budget. insured. And if as I said, if you don't have the pilot and you can't build the project, you're simply going to have a fallow piece of property. As I said, you cannot assume that, oh, the project would just get built and would be conventionally taxed, and those monies would then be available to the school board to reduce, to offset the common burden of school taxes, because the project won't get built.
And the schools, when they set their budget, they get 100% of their funds, correct?
You have to have the ability to cover the budget. That has to happen. Whether this project gets built or not built, you have to cover the taxes. The taxes have to cover the school budget.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So next we'll go into the presentation about Morris Street in particular. Thank you, Russell, for your time. Phil, you're up.
Thank you, Jillian. It's great to be here. It's been a while since I've seen everyone. I'm just going to put up this, or share my screen, or share this slide deck. Okay. Everybody can see okay?
Yep.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to give basically a brief overview of this project, where it's been, some changes that have been made in the recent past, primarily around some of these negotiations that have been happening with the pilot. So basically, this is the project location. To the north, this is basically flipped upside down, north and south. So to the north is Morris Street. To the west is Messler's Garage, which I'm sure we all know, at the terminus of Ridgedale Avenue. To the south, in the back of the property, is the train tracks. And then to the east is other properties in that Morris Street redevelopment area that were previously redeveloped and now have been kind of long occupied over here in this area. There is one multifamily house kind of in the middle as part of this, which that family was part of the planning process at the planning board. Just to give some history here, these properties were designated in 2007, March 2007, about 14 years ago, and I thought about it that if this project started kindergarten when it was designated, it would be in college now. So it's been some time that it was brewing. In 2012, the Phase 1 redevelopment plan was adopted, and that was we used to call it the old ambulance building, the old telephone building, as well as those other dwellings, the old scrapyard that I had showed you. Both of those properties were long vacant. And this property that we're talking about here, as some of you may recall, was the equipment yard for the heating oil company, Eggert Oil. 2016 to 2018, Hampshire Companies, the current owner and redeveloper, attempted to advance a self-storage proposal. Would have been, I think, one of the most beautiful self-storage buildings ever constructed. But the people of Morristown spoke, and Hampshire listened, and they ended up moving more into the direction of multifamily housing. Some important things about the timeline here, as part of bigger things that were happening in the background. In August 2018, the Housing Element and Fair Share Plan was adopted, and at that time, this property, this collection of properties, the remaining properties of the Morris Street redevelopment area, were included. So this is one of our obligations to develop this property for housing purposes to meet our fair share of the regional housing obligation. March 2019, the redevelopment plan was adopted for this property in particular, or these collection of it was 4 properties, I believe. In 2019, in August 2019, there was a resolution authorizing this redeveloper to proceed to the planning board as a designation And in January 2020, this project was approved by the planning board as part of the site plan approval. So I think that that's an important distinction based on one of the comments we heard earlier, that the planning board did approve this project already. So it's not that the process is happening in reverse. So just to kind of give you some facts and figures about the project, 85 units in total. This was the approved project in January 2020. This is not exactly what's in front of the board or what would be in front of the board as part of the arrangement that you have in front of you. But that said, what's currently approved is 85 units. 26 of those were live work, which was incredibly, it was incredible foresight given where we were just 2 months later entering the pandemic, that these were units that were going to be live work units from the start, with movable walls and kind of custom made furniture to make these things where people could work in their homes. Go figure. 13 affordable units, which exactly equals 15%, consistent with our ordinance. 115 spaces, which sort of sit underneath and behind the building. 3,000 feet of co-working space, which was sort of in this left-hand area of the ground floor, and then 600 feet of retail, which was presumed to be a cafe at the time, on the right-hand side. So as part of this arrangement, the redeveloper has proposed to modify the overall affordable housing strategy, which now moves into a 21% set aside, 18 affordable units. That's up 3 additional units. So 4 of those are 1-bedroom supportive units. 10 of those are 2-bedroom supportive units, and 4 are the 3-bedroom family units, which are they're kind of hard to get units for affordable for low and moderate income families. So those will still be affordable. So what do we mean by supportive units? These are envisioned under the COA rules as special needs housing. Most might know it as that. And so these would be kind of managed by an organization. It has not been identified yet, but yeah. So, and the other good thing about this from a municipal standpoint and from an affordable housing crediting standpoint is that typically we would get 18 affordable credits as part of this in terms of meeting our overall obligation. These supportive housing units are incentivized by the statute and the administrative rules to, and they incentivize municipalities to build these by offering a credit per bedroom. So this is 24 bedrooms of supportive housing plus the 4. So it's more like 28 units, which is getting, I think it's over 30%, which would be, in my recollection, in terms of inclusionary housing, definitely the highest percentage of credits per units. So this is a very good thing in terms of the municipal housing obligation. And it's a good thing morally, I would venture to say. So this just gives you that, what I just said. Maybe I should have waited. And here's a table that summarizes everything I had just said. 15% affordable at the planning board, 21 as part of this amendment, and the crediting is exactly as I said it a second ago. So now I'm gonna be Vanna White for Bob Powell. So Bob, you just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone. It's good to be with you again. I'm Bob Powell, principal with Nassau Capital Advisors in Princeton, New Jersey. Our firm specializes in performing independent financial analysis of a variety of real estate projects, including redevelopment projects. And we have been retained by the city, in this case, to do a thorough financial analysis of this particular project in order to determine several things. So let's turn the slide to the next one. The first issue that we're here to talk about tonight is a financial agreement that will permit payment in lieu of taxes. Russ Burchard explained that, I think, very effectively. I want to add one important detail to the description of the payments that are made in lieu of taxes to address, I think, a question that somebody from the public had raised earlier. The payment formula in the statute is elegantly simple. It's X% of annual gross revenues. And annual gross revenues is the top line of the project with no deductions. No deductions for expenses, debt service, any of those normal operating expenses. So it's a very simple and transparent number to document. And it also includes, annual gross revenues also includes not just rental income, but all other income that a project like this will generate. The other sources of income would include parking revenues, fees, late fees, pet fees, any other fees that tenants would pay in connection with their leases. All of those fees are encompassed in annual gross revenues. The financial agreement that is before the governing body will also provide, per statute, that every year the developer will provide the town with an independent financial audit of the annual gross revenues and other features of the agreement for the prior year. So you will have confirmation of exactly what those revenues were, and to the extent that the auditor determines that adjustments need to be made to make them accurate, that will be done. All of this is included in a document called the financial agreement, which is the subject of the council action tonight. Let's go to the next slide if we could. Just to give you, Phil has given you a very helpful overview, a design overview and geographic overview of the project. Let me put some financial context to this in terms of what we're talking about in terms of money. We estimate that the project will have a total development cost of approximately $34 million. And those funds will come from two sources, basically. One will be a project loan that the developer will be able to obtain for about 68% of the project cost. And the other 32%, roughly a third of the cost of the project, or $11 million, will be developer equity. That's old-fashioned equity as we all seem to understand it, I think. It's cash that has to go in. It is the funds that are at risk. And that's a very healthy ratio of debt to equity, in my opinion, in my experience in doing a lot of real estate transactions. It provides a margin of cushion so that the loan is not likely to go into default because of the level of equity that's in there. And it also illustrates the level of financial commitment that the developer has to make to get the project built. Let's flip to the next slide if we could. Phil had gone through briefly the mix of the units. I want to just recap that because this project has an uncommonly large amount and percentage of non-market rate housing, of subsidized housing, if you would. We call these units affordable housing or supportive housing, but from a financial point of view, what that group of units, that 18 group of units means is that these are units that are not bringing in market rate rents. And for the most part, they pull down the profitability of the project. They require subsidies internally by the developer. The town is not subsidizing these units. The developer is subsidizing the units. And that's a factor in this mix of units that has a serious implication for the need for a pilot, as we will see. You already have a summary from Phil of the distribution of the affordable units. Most of them are supportive housing, and 4 of them are 3-bedroom family units, a very unusual number for that size of a unit, which are all part of the mix. So let's go to the next slide. If we could flip to the next slide.
Is this good, Bob? Can you see this?
Yes. Okay. The first thing that we did in looking at the application of the developer is determine a basic question. Can the project be financially feasible if it's subject to full taxes? A pilot decision is a discretionary decision on the part of the municipality. There's no as of right entitlement in the statute for a developer to get a pilot. The process typically, in my experience, is for the developer to apply for the pilot, and in that application needs to make a demonstration that but for the pilot, the project is not financially feasible. We ran our own analysis of the developer's numbers. It was a process that took many, many months of negotiation with the developer over all the key details of the project: hard costs, soft costs, operating expenses, projected rental income for the market rate units, the projected rental income for the affordable units. All of those economic factors come together in our financial model to measure the return on investment that the developer is likely to obtain by making that $11 million equity investment that I mentioned just a moment ago. And we came to a couple of conclusions. Number one, at full taxes, the project generates a subpar internal return on investment of around 8%, which is not a satisfactory return given the level of risk that's associated with this project. Typically, in the capital markets, an IRR, or internal rate of return for a successful project to attract capital, needs to be in the low to mid double digits, 11, 12, 13%. In this case, with the pilot that we have negotiated with the developer, which is an aggressive pilot from the town's point of view, the rate of return on investment is a little over 10.5%. That's satisfactory. It's not excessive by any means. I've been associated with complicated pilot transactions in many other nearby towns in the last several years where the return on investment was more like 12 or 13%. In this case, our negotiations with the developer imposed significantly higher pilot rates than are usually included in a financial agreement at the beginning, and then we raised them in the agreement over a period of years in intervals that gradually bring the pilot payment very close to full taxes by year 11. So what we've concluded is that this project cannot be built successfully with all the extra costs associated with the affordable and supportive housing units if it has to pay full taxes. We have come up with a pilot that we think is a win-win. A win for the town in terms of revenue, substantial revenues from the project, that also provides the developer with the adequate financial incentives to invest the capital to get the project built. And that's the basis of the analysis that we've done. And in my professional opinion, the project is financially feasible with this pilot structure that we're going to explain in just a moment. Let's turn to the next slide when we can take a look at the overview of the agreement. The particular pilot agreement that is before the governing body tonight is one of the more aggressive pilot agreements from the municipality's point of view that I've been associated with for 10 or 15 years. The statute, as Russ Bouchard mentioned, allows the agreement to extend up to 30 years. This agreement extends only 25 years. So after 25 years, the project goes back on the tax rolls. Most pilot agreements that I've been associated with start out at a relatively low rate. 10% is the minimum, 10 or 11%. And to the extent that they ever go up at all during the term, that's usually after 10 or 15 years. The negotiations that we have done with the developer in this case provide a more aggressive pilot rate, as you see here. Years 1 through 4, excuse me, the pilot rate is 11.5%. And then you see the increments, the series of increments that raise the percentage of annual gross revenues that the developer pays from 11.5% all the way up to 16.5% by year 23. As I mentioned a minute ago, to translate the schedule of payments into something I think we can all understand, the 11.5% rate in years 1 through 4 is the equivalent of 63% of what full taxes would be. So that's a fairly significant discount off of full taxes in the first 4 years. In my professional opinion and experience, that first 4-year period is the riskiest part of the project for the developer. It's when the units have just been finished, the developer's carrying a lot of debt on the project, and you're trying to rent the place up and get it to a full occupancy rate as quickly as you can to cover your debt service and operating expenses. That's why we've recommended that the lowest of all the pilot rates be set in that initial 4-year period to assist the developer in renting the place up to full occupancy, which is roughly 95 or 96%. Once that happens, we start escalating the pilot rates thereafter. And we think that that still keeps the project financially feasible. By year 11, when the project hits 14% of annual gross revenues, those payments are projected to be 81% of full taxes. That's in year 11. And by year 23, we're over 90% of full taxes. So the project is rapidly being moved forward with these pilot rates, closer and closer to full taxes, but with the incentives in the early years to allow the developer to rent the place up as quickly as possible. We have 2 other features negotiated into this agreement that are also unusual. And this actually responds to another question one of the members of the public raised earlier this evening, which is, have we taken into account the uncertainty of some huge problem with the project financially, and what would we do in that case? We have incorporated in this financial agreement minimum pilot payments, which are not required by the statute. The minimum pilot payment is year 1, $100,000. That is without regard to how many leases are signed in year 1. Year 1 is the year that the certificate of completion on the project is issued. I fully expect, given the quality of the project, that the developer will have pre-leased during the construction period, probably 20 or 30 or 40% of the units, so that by the time the certificate of completion is issued, the project will have significant occupancy. But the $100,000 minimum payment is a floor below which we don't want the payments to go. Beginning in year 2, when we expect the project to be substantially occupied, and thereafter, the minimum payment goes to $225,000 a year. And that minimum payment escalates at 2% a year for the remainder of the agreement. I expect that that we'll never have a case, because of the quality of this project, that the minimum payments will kick in. But it's there to take account of an uncertainty, which we believe is appropriate and prudent for the town to have built into the agreement. And it protects the municipality in a way that allows the administration to plan on the revenue for budgeting purposes. So let's flip over to the next slide if we could, Bill. I'm going to show you the pilot revenues in just a minute. But let me tell you, put this into context, as I think somebody else mentioned earlier in the presentation here. Right now, we're talking about a piece of ground in Morristown that's vacant, that paid last year a little over $32,000 totally in taxes. The first full year that the project is paying its pilot payments, I project that the pilot payments will be more than ninefold that $32,000, a little over $300,000. So the project will have a significant financial benefit to the town compared to the significant underutilization of the site in its current form. And for that reason, just for that reason, the financial reason, in my opinion, this pilot agreement serves a public purpose for Morristown, notwithstanding the quality of the housing and the affordable units that are going to be added to your housing stock as well. Let's flip over to one final or two final slides. Here you see, I'll try to make this a little less complicated than it may appear to be. In the columns over on the left, the first full year of occupancy, that's after it's rented up in year one, we project that the pilot payments will be $302,000 that first full year. Total pilot payments. 5% of that goes to the county. The 95% that goes to Morristown translates into, as you see, $287,000. The other numbers on that column as you go over to the right, that row over the right, show you just by way of example, in the hypothetical case that the project were built with full taxes that first year would be $489,000. That is a hypothetical number because in my opinion, the project won't be built if it had to pay full taxes. But it's important to put the pilot revenues in context of what full taxes might have been. At full taxes of $489,000, Morristown municipality collects about 34% of that, or $173,000. So the difference between what Morristown receives in pilot revenues versus what it would have received hypothetically with taxes is that it's going to receive $114,000 more in pilot revenues than it would have received in taxes. If I go down to year 10, you see I've taken just a couple of years out. Year 10, the pilot payment is $472,000. Your share of that is $448,000. And by year 25, you see the pilot payment is $734,000. Your share of that is close to $700,000. So that those escalations that we talked about earlier will bring the pilot payments by the end of the term very close to full taxes, at which time after year 25, the project then goes back to full taxes. The total excess of pilot payments to the town versus taxes, hypothetically, over that 25-year period is over $6 million, as the number is indicated down there at the bottom. I want to make one other comment, if I may, Phil, before I turn it back over to you, going back to the impact on schools. I appreciate the conversation that Rush had with us on the pilot and the school formulas. But I want to highlight a key important issue that addresses a couple of concerns that the members of the public raised earlier. And that is this: whether or not this project is subject to full taxes or a pilot payment will have no impact whatsoever on the Morristown school budget. I want to repeat that. If this project were built with full taxes, or if it's not built at all, or if it's built with a pilot, those three different scenarios, it will have no impact at all on the expense budget of the Morristown School Board. And here's the reason. School boards in New Jersey develop their expense budget independently of what happens to the rateable base in their town. They are not concerned about raising their own funds. The town raises money for school boards. The school board doesn't raise money. It doesn't have the power to tax. The school board will develop a budget. If the budget goes up, it'll send that budget with the increased expenses to the town administration, and they will, and the board will get its money. And it will get its money regardless, as I said twice before, whether this project is built or not built with taxes, or it's not built at all. And so it's important to understand that there's nothing about a pilot agreement that takes money away from school children. And it's important that we clear that up. It's a misconception that we hear occasionally, and I want to make sure that folks understand that this is an action that's about to be taken, hopefully, for the project that will not affect the ability of the schools to pay for their costs. With that, let me turn it back to Phil and maybe some questions from the council as well.
Thank you, Rob.
I did have one question, Bob. I understand. So the rate of return, the 8%, is a factor of the construction costs relative to the rents that can be obtained. I understand there's a third sort of quality control element in there that upon completion of the project, there's an evaluation of the actual construction costs to determine if the projected construction costs were actually valid. And can you talk about that and what happens if those costs, if the projected costs were not?
We had a lot of conversation about doing the construction cost audit, and for a variety of reasons decided that it wasn't really going to address the concerns that we had about costs. So what we did was the developer put forward a construction cost budget that was significantly higher than our team felt was appropriate. And we've shared that with you and other members of the governing body. In our back and forth with the developer, we have come to an agreement to lower the estimated construction cost in the project significantly to about $230 a square foot. It's still a little early to know what's happening with construction costs in the real estate business, except that we know they're continuing to go up. There's a labor shortage in the construction trades. So developers are experiencing legitimately construction cost increases. We decided not to put in the audit for the construction. There will be an audit of the building, and we'll know what the construction costs were as part of the initial audit. But instead of dealing with it by changing the pilot formula ex post facto after the fact, that's the point at which we decided to start putting in these aggressive increases in the pilot rates over the first 25-year period. And that's a more certain way of capturing the increased profit that will occur in the event that the project doesn't cost as much as they're projecting that it will cost. In other words, if the project doesn't cost as much as they're projecting, they are likely to be able to borrow an additional amount of money, and we will be able to capture through the rents what we think are the exact rent, the rents that we've projected. We'll be able to capture in this schedule of pilot revenues an increasing amount of the revenue increases that are coming out of the project.
Bob, a couple of other questions, if you might.
Sure.
Actually, I'd like to start with Phil. Phil, also in the original project, it was also envisioned as a co-working space, and it had 3,000 square feet of common workspace and 600 square feet of retail. I would envision that under this plan, that is not changing the live-work concept that was presented.
It's a good question. That's my understanding as well.
Okay, and does this project have to go back to the planning board because of the inclusion of supportive housing units?
We've had discussions about that. It probably is the more conservative thing to do, to amend in that way. So it's possible that will happen.
And if there's
it will happen. In fact, a condition to the developer realizing the financial agreement is that they go back to the planning board to amend site plan approval The attorney for the developer has indicated that an application will be submitted imminently. Moreover, there will be a separate redevelopment agreement, which will be before the council, and that will also require the developer to build the project that Phil articulated as amended from the original one that was approved.
So John, if I have it correct then, John, if the planning board substantially changes the plans or even to any degree changes the plan of substance, it does come back to council for reconsideration via the developer's agreement.
Well, yeah, the two will work in tandem. They're going to have to go back and amend the site plan approval to provide for the items that Phil discussed earlier in terms of the supportive housing, et cetera. That concept, and that's going to require some changes, I'm told minor, but we haven't seen the application yet, modifications to the site plan approval. There will also be a redevelopment agreement that further codifies those project amendments and benefits that Phil described earlier this evening.
And with the agreement itself, it does still contain an ability to audit the cost of the construction. And it's also my understanding that we have the ability to annually audit the revenues associated with the project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Going back, I'm going to challenge you a little bit, Bob, but I don't necessarily need a response, Bob Powell. With reference to, I think you're missing the point on education. I don't think people are saying that that schools are not going to get their full budgeted amount. I think the point you're missing that some of the public has raised is the allocation of that in the future is not going to be allocated. A portion of the school budget is not going to be allocated to this project. So increases in the budget will fall on existing taxpayers. I think that's a point that you missed when you explain this. And that's the point they're trying to make. And I think the second point that I want to make here is that the school budget, they do struggle. They do struggle. They're capped, I believe, at a 2% increase per year still under the current law. You know, we have an expanded school system here with challenges, socioeconomic issues challenging the school, trying to maintain a very high quality of schools. So I think that is a discussion that, and I'm glad you had it tonight, because I think it is a discussion that we need to revisit when we talk about several issues in the future. But with reference to these two gentlemen, I have no further questions. Toshiba.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments from council members?
Toshiba, if I may just, in terms of procedurally what is happening, so the public understands, tonight is actually just an introduction of the ordinance. Tonight is not the final act to approve the financial agreement. Financial agreements must be enacted by ordinance. There's an introduction, and then there will be a date set in the future for a public hearing and a second reading and second vote. And it is only at that time that the financial agreement is approved. As I indicated before, in addition to that, there will be other things happening. The developer will have to go back to the planning board for amended site plan, and there will be a redevelopment agreement. That redevelopment agreement gets approved by simple resolution. And again, that redevelopment agreement will, among other things, codify the amendments to the original approval that Phil Abramson discussed earlier. So that's sort of what's happening procedurally.
Question, perhaps it's for John. Upon introduction, is the financial agreement made available to the public, or is that still confidential?
The financial agreement will be made available to the public after introduction.
Will that be available via Oprah or on the town website?
Well, I defer to there's no reason not to put it up on the town website. And I believe the town has done that in the past, but I would defer to your clerk on that.
Historically, in the notice we published that it is available through the clerk's office.
Are there any other council members that have any comments or questions for our professionals? Take that as a no.
I want to thank everyone for your time this evening and all the professionals that offered their time. Thank you.
Likewise.
You're welcome.
Sheba, I just want to say thank you to our council and our administration for working out this agreement. I know it took a lot of work and a lot of time, and I appreciate the effort that went to it.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Okay.
All right.
Regular business?
Yes, moving on to regular business.
Okay, we have 3 ordinances for introduction this evening. Ordinance O-18-2021, ordinance approving the application and authorizing the financial agreement for long-term tax exemption by and between the town of Morristown and Morris Street 2015 Urban Renewal LLC.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number O-18-2021.
I'll second it.
Any further comments or questions from council? On the introduction of ordinance O-18-2021, Councilwoman Cotton,
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mayer,
Yes.
Councilman Silva,
Yes.
Council President Armington,
Yes.
Councilwoman Foster.
Yes.
Ordinance O-18-2021 has been introduced properly by title and will be considered further after a public hearing on August 17th. Ordinance number O-18-2021, ordinance amending and supplementing the code of the town of Morristown, Chapter 7 Traffic, Section 40.2, handicap parking on streets for private residences, to rescind ordinance O-2-2020 and reinstate a dedicated handicap parking space for a resident of 31 Western Avenue.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number O-19-2021.
Second it.
Any comments or questions? On the introduction of ordinance O-19-2021, Councilwoman Cotton,
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone,
Yes.
Councilman Mayer,
Yes.
Councilman Silva,
Yes.
Council President Armington,
Yes.
Councilman Foster.
Yes.
Ordinance O-19-2021 has been introduced properly by title and will be considered further after a public hearing on August 17th. Ordinance number O-20-2021, ordinance amending and supplementing the code of the town of Morristown, Chapter 7 Traffic, Section 37 Loading Zones.
I'll make a motion to introduce ordinance number O-20-2021.
I'll second it.
Comments or questions from council?
Jillian clarified for me this afternoon. I just want to restate it. This is not a dedicated space for 7-Eleven. It is a loading space that is available to all the stores in that section of Morris Avenue. And secondly, it is actually not taking away any of the street parking spaces that currently exist.
That's correct, Councilman.
Thank you.
Okay, on the introduction of ordinance O-2021, Councilwoman Cotton,
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone,
Yes.
Councilman Mayer,
Yes.
Councilman Silva,
Yes.
Council President Armington,
Yes.
Councilman Foster.
Yes.
Ordinance O-20-2021 has been introduced properly by title and will be considered further after a public hearing on August 17th. There are no ordinances for adoption this evening. We do have 5 resolutions for adoption. Would a member of council like to pull any for separate consideration?
Margot, I'd like to pull 125 and 126.
Any others? Okay.
I'd like to pull 123.
123, okay.
Yes.
On the adoption of resolution numbers 124, 2021 and 127, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve those resolutions.
I'll second it.
Okay. Again, on the adoption of 124, 2021 and 127, 2021, Councilwoman Cotton,
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone,
Yes.
Councilman Mayor,
Yes.
Councilman Silva,
Yes.
Council President Armington,
Yes.
Councilman Foster.
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution number R-123, 2021, resolution amending contract awarded to Waters and Bugby General Contractors for concrete sidewalk grinding and inventory services. We have a motion to adopt.
Make a motion to
adopt.
I'll second.
Councilman Silva.
Yes, what I meant was 124. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll go back then. Okay, on the adoption of R-123, 2021, Councilwoman Cotton.
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone.
Yes.
Councilman Mayor.
Yes.
Councilman Silva.
Yes.
Council President Armington.
Yes.
And Councilwoman Foster.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. So we'll just go through them separately since we are amending the adoption of 124 and 127. Resolution R-124, 2021, resolution awarding bid to Municipal Inspection Corporation for elevator subcode official. May I have a motion to adopt?
I'll make a motion to adopt.
I'll second it.
Councilman Silva.
Yes. I think it's important for administration to express the meeting for the benefit of the residents why the lowest bid was not chosen, but the highest bid. I understand it, and all of us understand it, but I think for the benefit of residents.
Certainly, Councilman. So in this case, the bid for elevator inspections required a bid bond to be submitted along with the bid, and the bid bond was a percentage of the total bid award. The lowest bidder did not comply with the bid spec requirements with regard to the bid bond, and there was a challenge by the other bidder with regards to ensuring that all bidders comply with the bid specs. As a result, the lower bid was thrown out, and we are moving forward with awarding the higher bid tonight.
Any other questions? On the adoption of resolution R-124, 2021, Councilwoman Cotton.
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone.
Yes.
Councilman Mayor.
Yes.
Councilman Silva.
Yes.
Council President Armington.
Yes.
Councilwoman Foster.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Resolution number R-125, 2021, resolution accepting grant from the 2021 Morris County Historic Preservation Trust Fund for the Morristown Post Office acquisition. Have a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Second it.
Councilman Iannacone.
Thank you, Margot. I think it's very, very good that we're actually getting these funds together to possibly do something with the post office. But I just have a question, Jillian. You know, an undertaking like this by the town is a considerable expense. And there's been plans alluded to, but no definitive plans actually presented to the public or presented to council. That being said, we know that a project like this would probably entail a feasibility study, a study where we basically would be assessing what the alternative uses are if certain services of the town were to move in this building, assessing where services would be placed, not maybe just in this building, but throughout town. But it's a feasibility study, it's a cost study, it is a study that then examines the finances of the overall projects. And I put projects because it's obviously going to be more than just buying the post office. And it's going to entail some implication on the town budget. When will we be seeing what's being planned as the underlying presumptions or goals of what we're trying to achieve with these grants that we're pursuing?
So we have been diligently discussing the purchase of this post office with the U.S. Postal Service now for years. And, you know, it's taken us a while to get to a point where, you know, we have a contract to come back before you. I think we are in the home stretch of getting something that the town administration and the U.S. Postal Service can agree to, which then we will present to this governing body for consideration to move forward with entering into a contract. Following that, we will enter into a due diligence period in which we anticipate engaging professionals who will help us in evaluating the condition of the building and also the feasibility of the plans that we have for that building. And then we'll come back with information to this body and to the public with those findings and a concept to move forward. Certainly this is a complex undertaking that will, I expect, to take place over a period of time, and will be somewhat iterative, but we expect that we'll have substantial set of information once we're able to complete the due diligence period with the post office. So I do expect to have more information later on this year. The grants that you're considering tonight, the resolutions, is the County Historic Preservation Trust Fund grants for $159,000, which the county so generously awarded to the town as a second tranche toward the acquisition costs. That's in addition to the $480,000 that were awarded last year. The county program allows for 2 years to expend those funds. There is a process if we need additional time to request an extension, although we are trying to work to not request that kind of extension. So, you know, like I said, I expect that we're going to come back to you with additional information and a contract for consideration later this year, hopefully, assuming the post office and we can come to an agreement in a timely manner. And then we'll be able to really get into the building and do the due diligence and analysis that we really need to do in order to come back with some concrete information.
Thank you, Joey.
You're welcome.
Okay, on the adoption of Resolution R-125, 2021, Councilwoman Cotton.
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone.
Yes.
Councilwoman Mayer.
Yes.
Councilman Silva.
Yes.
Council President Armington.
Yes.
Councilman Foster.
Yes.
Resolution is adopted. Resolution number R-126-2021, resolution requesting approval for the insertion of a special item of revenue in the 2021 budget pursuant to NJSA 48:4-87, Morris County Post Office Historic Grant 2021.
Make a motion to adopt resolution number R-126-2021.
I'll second it.
Councilman Iannacone?
No, my questions were answered by Jillian with the prior resolution.
Excellent, thank you. On the adoption of resolution R-126-2021, Councilwoman Cotton.
Yes.
Councilman Iannacone?
Yes.
Councilman Mayer?
Yes.
Councilman Silva?
Yes.
Council President Armington?
Yes.
Councilman Foster?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Council Vice President, before we adjourn, if there are any council liaison reports, can we get a hearing of that?
Sure. I'd just like to start off by saying that the Morristown Parking Authority meets tomorrow.
With reference to the Morristown Partnership, I don't know if everybody's noticed, but it's really great to see that the events are loading back into the calendar, and hopefully, if things stay the same, we'll be able to enjoy all those events in the future. Another good news is that the Morris County Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners, has awarded the partnership a $100,000 grant to support the festival on the green. And actually that's going to offset any of the anticipated increases in the costs associated with that festival. So it's a much welcome grant from the county to support the Festival of the Green. And the partnership was extremely thankful to have received it. And And again, a lot of credit to the administration of the Morristown Partnership for working with the county to secure that grant. The only other real news to report tonight is they still remain very, very concerned about 5G in town, the impact that 5G may have on our streetscape, a streetscape that was heavily invested in by the Morristown Partnership itself. So they look forward to those continued discussions.
Thank you, Councilman.
We had a street committee meeting, and I'd like to announce that the Spring Beautiful Tree winners are Lori David Reynolds. That is beautiful. It's a silver oak tree, and there's ongoing work done in town. And we are meeting this week to discuss invasive species removal at Grant Park. And on August 15th at 1 p.m., anybody who wants to help with the invasive species removal, you can meet at Grant. And hopefully we'll get people out there helping us out, because it will make for a quick project. Thank you.
Are there any other council liaison reports? If not, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Motion. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Have a wonderful night.
Thank
Good
you,
night, all.
everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.